More now on the health of actor Bruce Willis. His family revealing today that Willis is suffering from a disease called frontotemporal dementia. In a statement, they say that, quote, since we announced Bruce's diagnosis of aphasia in spring of 2022, Bruce's condition has progressed.
He started off as a blue-collar kid from New Jersey, never imagining that one day he'd become one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood. Bruce Willis didn't take the conventional path to fame. He stumbled, failed, adjusted, and fought through his own limitations to rise to the top. His life, filled with unexpected twists and private hardships, shaped the man who would one day be known not just as a leading man, but as a cultural icon. Behind the tough guy persona was someone constantly navigating storms, both internal and external, yet determined to keep moving forward. Born in a small town called Idar Oberstein, West Germany, Bruce's story began under humble conditions. His father was an American soldier, his mother a German native. After the family moved back to the US, they settled in Carneys Point, New Jersey. Life wasn't glamorous. His father worked as a welder, mechanic, and factory worker, whatever paid the bills. Bruce inherited that work ethic early on, taking on odd jobs and learning to stand up for himself in a tough neighborhood, where you had to be either quick or invisible. School was never really Bruce's thing. He had a stutter that made him an easy target. But something interesting happened when he got on stage. His speech problems vanished. Acting wasn't just a hobby. It became his outlet, his therapy. He joined the drama club and found a space where he could speak freely, without fear.
And we now have a more specific diagnosis, frontotemporal dementia, known as FTD. Unfortunately, challenges with communication are just one symptom of the disease that Bruce faces.
He wasn't the best student, but he was relentless, and that persistence eventually led him to Montclair State University, where he formally studied drama before dropping out to chase the dream full-time. Before fame, Bruce was grinding, bartending in New York, bouncing at clubs, even doing some private security work. He was always working, always watching people, learning how they ticked. That awareness, that ability to read a room, would later become one of his most valuable traits as an actor. He auditioned relentlessly, and while rejection was the norm, it never stopped him. He kept showing up, knowing that all it would take was one chance. That chance came when he landed the role of David Addison on Moonlighting. It was the perfect storm, witty, sharp, charming. Bruce brought a swagger to television that felt different. The chemistry was undeniable, and his performance didn't go unnoticed. Hollywood was paying attention. Still, TV wasn't the goal. He had his sights set on the big screen, and when an opportunity came along to star in an action movie called Die Hard, he took it, even if almost no one believed he was the right choice. Die Hard didn't just work, it exploded. Bruce wasn't the muscle-bound action hero that audiences were used to. He was vulnerable, funny, rough around the edges. John McClane became a different kind of hero one people could relate to, and suddenly, Bruce Willis was a global name. With success came more offers. Action, comedy, drama, he did it all. Pulp Fiction, 12 Monkeys, The Fifth Element, Armageddon, The Sixth Sense. The list goes on. But while the career looked flawless from the outside,
While this is painful, it is a relief to finally have a clear diagnosis. I'm joined by CNN medical analyst Dr. Jonathan Reiner. Dr. Reiner, great to see you tonight. So what is frontotemporal dementia and how common is it?
Bruce was facing private battles behind the scenes. Fame isn't easy. The more successful he became, the more pressure followed. Expectations grew heavier. Studios demanded more. Tabloids circled constantly. He went through a high-profile divorce that played out in front of the entire world. Personal relationships became public property. Still, Bruce kept showing up to work, delivering performances that reminded everyone why he was in demand in the first place. Whether it was the exhausted cop, the aging soldier, or the misunderstood outcast, he gave each role the raw edge only he could deliver. But Bruce didn't just want to be an actor. He wanted control. He stepped into producing, forming his own company, and backing projects that others wouldn't touch. He took risks, some that paid off and some that didn't. Financially, he did well. He bought properties, invested smartly, and built a fortune that would allow him to be selective about future roles. Still, something drove him to keep working. Whether it was passion or pressure, he never really slowed down. As the 2000s progressed, Bruce found himself increasingly in roles that leaned into his age. He wasn't trying to be the young action star anymore. He was leaning into the grizzled veteran archetype, often playing characters who had seen too much and trusted too little. In Red, he played a retired assassin. In Looper, an older version of a time-traveling killer. These characters resonated with audiences because they reflected something real, something earned. His physical presence remained intimidating, but it was his emotional subtlety that matured. His performances in later years showed a depth that earlier roles hinted at, but never fully explored. He seemed more comfortable not saying much, letting silence speak volumes. That economy of expression became his trademark. Less was more. And in an industry filled with over-the-top spectacle, that simplicity made him stand out even more. Privately, Bruce kept his circle tight. He had children, remarried, and tried to stay out of the limelight when not working. Photos of him enjoying quiet moments with family or spending time at his ranch revealed a man who valued peace more than the spotlight. But that peace was interrupted when rumors began swirling about his health. Speculation increased when he began taking roles in low-budget films, often with limited screen time.
So, Allison, frontotemporal dementia is sort of an umbrella term that describes a series of conditions that ultimately result in the loss of neural tissue.
Fans wondered if something was wrong. Eventually, his family confirmed that Bruce had been diagnosed with a condition affecting his cognitive abilities. It wasn't just a health update, it felt like a chapter closing. The man who had played so many fighters was now facing a battle that no script could resolve. But what stood out was how his loved ones rallied around him. His wife, his children, even his ex-wife, all stood as one. The unity they showed wasn't just inspiring, it was proof of the character behind the celebrity. Even in this new chapter, Bruce remains active in his own way. He's seen spending time outdoors, enjoying the simple things. There's a quiet dignity in how he's handled this moment. No drama, no spectacle, just a man living on his own terms. His legacy isn't just in the films, it's in how he made people feel. The laughter, the adrenaline, the tears, that was all real. And even now, fans around the world continue to root for him, not because he's invincible, but because he's human. His career spans decades and crosses genres. He's done big-budget action, indie drama, and even lent his voice to animated films. But through all the transitions, one thing remained constant: his authenticity. Bruce never pretended to be something he wasn't. He played heroes who were flawed, who made mistakes, who doubted themselves. And that honesty made his performances hit harder than explosions ever could. Looking back, Bruce Willis didn't just have a successful career, he built a legend. One forged in grit, humor, and resilience. He didn't let failure define him. He didn't let success spoil him. He just kept working, kept evolving, and kept showing up. And now, even as he steps away from the stage, his presence lingers. In every punchline, in every explosion, in every quiet stare. He reminded everyone that strength isn't about how loud you are. It's about how long you stand when everything around you falls apart. And Bruce Willis stood tall, even when the world expected him to fall. That's the real legacy. Not just the movies, not just the awards, but the man who never quit, even when no one else saw the fight he was in. Exploding buildings. Instead, he became the quiet force in the background, the man whose presence alone could carry a scene.
In the frontal and temporal lobes of the brain, the frontal lobes sort of behind your forehead, the temporal lobes sort of behind your ears. Those are the parts of the brain that are involved with helping you form certain behaviors, process hearing, form memories, and ultimately it results in clinical conditions that sometimes radically change the behavior.
Directors leaned into this version of him. They knew that with Bruce, a single look could say what 10 lines of dialogue couldn't. His performances became more distilled, more internalized, more about what wasn't said. He took on dozens of smaller films during this period. Some critics questioned why someone of his stature would appear in so many lower-budget projects. Was it a money play, a contract obligation, or was it something deeper perhaps, a desire to stay busy, to keep working while he still could? These questions grew louder as fans began noticing a pattern. His screen time was shorter, his dialogue simpler, and at times, it seemed like he was being shielded from complex scenes. Behind closed doors, the truth was more painful than anyone guessed. Bruce was battling an illness that was slowly interfering with his ability to communicate. What began as occasional forgetfulness and halting speech eventually became something that couldn't be hidden. Scripts had to be rewritten. Co-stars had to pick up slack. Entire productions were adjusted around him, but through it all, he showed up. He gave what he could, and no one who worked with him had anything but respect for the effort he continued to put in. Family became his anchor during this time. Bruce had 5 daughters from 2 marriages, and each one became part of a close-knit unit surrounding him. They didn't care about the cameras or the legacy or the headlines. They cared about the man they called Dad. Whether it was quiet afternoons in Idaho or small gatherings at home, they made sure he never faced any of it alone. His wife, Emma Hemming, became a steady force protecting his privacy, while also making space for fans to send their love and support. Even Demi Moore, his former spouse and longtime friend, was right there with them. The tabloids had once written stories of drama and scandal between the two, but time proved those headlines wrong. What remained between them wasn't bitterness. It was a deep respect, and most importantly, a shared commitment to their children. The fact that both families came together under one roof to care for him spoke volumes about the kind of man Bruce was behind the scenes. In his final years in the industry, he stopped chasing blockbusters and leaned more into the characters that let him reflect, roles that didn't rely on stunts or physicality, roles where he could just be. Whether it was the disillusioned sheriff in a dying town or the quiet loner caught in someone else's mess, these parts felt closer to who he was becoming in real life, more introspective, more still, more reflective, not washed up, but evolving. And then it became official. His family released a statement confirming what many had feared: Bruce had been diagnosed with a progressive cognitive condition. The announcement was brief, honest, and full of love. It wasn't designed to gain sympathy. It was about closure.
Of a patient or result in difficulty communicating. And I think last year when Mr. Willis's family reported that he was suffering from aphasia, that was the first clue that he had frontotemporal dementia, which often involves some form of aphasia.
About letting the world know why he would be stepping away, about preparing fans for the reality that there would be no more McClane one-liners, no more sly smirks, no more explosive comebacks. It was the end of a chapter, but instead of fading into silence, Bruce's story gained a different kind of volume. Friends, colleagues, and fans flooded social media with stories, some about working with him, others about how his movies had changed their lives. People recalled watching Die Hard with their dads, quoting lines from The Fifth Element on road trips, and tearing up during The Sixth Sense's final moments. Bruce had unknowingly become a part of millions of personal histories, and now all those people were saying thank you in return. The most powerful part of this response wasn't just the celebrity tributes. It was the ordinary people, nurses, teachers, construction workers, service members who felt like they had grown up with Bruce on screen. He was the everyman action hero, the guy who looked like he'd take a punch for you, the guy who never looked untouchable, but always stood back up. That relatability was why fans felt such a personal connection. His characters bled, got scared, made mistakes, but they never gave up. And that's exactly what Bruce was doing now. Even as he stepped away from film, he didn't disappear. His family shared updates from time to time, photos of him hiking, dancing, playing with his daughters, or just enjoying a quiet meal. He looked happy, not as sharp maybe, not as loud, but peaceful. And maybe that's what he had wanted all along, not to go out in a blaze of cinematic glory, but to quietly retire into a world built on the people who mattered most to him. There's something deeply human about how Bruce's story is unfolding. Most action stars go out with fanfare, with one last impossible stunt, but Bruce is doing something braver. He's living his truth with dignity, surrounded by those who love him. He's not pretending to be invincible anymore. He's not acting like nothing can touch him. And in that honesty, he's more powerful than he ever was on screen. As for his legacy, it's not just in the films. It's in how he made people feel seen, how he gave audiences a new kind of hero, one who wasn't perfect, one who doubted himself, one who bled, both literally and emotionally. His characters resonated because they reflected real struggle. They weren't above us, they were us. And because of that, Bruce's work will continue to matter, long after the cameras stop rolling. In the years since his retirement from acting, the industry hasn't forgotten Bruce Willis. If anything, it started to understand just how much he meant to cinema. Tributes have come in waves, retrospectives, anniversary screenings, documentaries, all dedicated to honoring the decades he spent entertaining the world. Younger actors who once grew up watching him now cite him as a major influence. Directors speak of him with reverence, not just for his performances, but for his professionalism, humility, and quiet brilliance on set. Studios have begun restoring and re-releasing his most iconic films, not just for nostalgia, but because the characters he created remain relevant. John McClane, in particular, has taken on new meaning.
What causes this?
It's a disease with multiple causes. There is sometimes a genetic component. This can run in families. It's a relatively rare disease, seen in about 50,000 Americans, but it's probably the most common form of dementia in young people.
Once just a witty cop with a radio and a bad attitude, he's now seen as a symbol of resilience. Not the kind that blows up buildings, but the kind that holds on when everything else breaks. That unpolished strength is what Bruce captured better than anyone. In private, Bruce continues to live as fully as he can. The man who once spent long hours on set surrounded by explosions now spends afternoons listening to music, walking in the sun, or laughing with family. His daughters share moments from their lives, birthdays, holidays, milestones. And sometimes he's there in the background, smiling, quiet, content. That presence, that warmth, speaks louder now than any line of dialogue ever could. People who know him say he's still got that mischievous charm. He'll crack a joke, give a smirk, make a face that tells you he's still in there. The quick wit may not come as fast, the movement's a little slower, but the soul is unchanged. He's still Bruce, still the man who played harmonica on set between takes, who made crew members laugh, who always knew the names of the people around him. His family keeps him grounded, but they've also become his voice. They advocate for awareness and compassion, using their platform to shed light on the condition affecting him. They don't ask for pity, they ask for understanding. They want the world to see not what's been lost, but what still remains: love, dignity, and the deep human value of presence. Bruce gave everything to the screen for decades. Now it's his turn to receive something back. And what he's getting isn't just recognition, it's legacy. Not the kind written in contracts or box office numbers, but the kind etched into people's lives. The man who once jumped off skyscrapers and traded punches with villains is now a father, a husband, a friend. He's the man people remember watching with their parents, the one they quoted on road trips, the one they turned to when they needed to feel strong. The real strength wasn't in how many enemies he defeated, but in how authentically he played every scene. Bruce Willis brought heart to roles that didn't always ask for it. He gave meaning to characters who could have just been cool, or tough, or funny. Instead, he made them human. He gave them vulnerability, conflict, growth. And in doing that, he gave audiences permission to be all of those things too. Today, when people look back on his filmography, they don't just see an actor, they see a part of their own lives, a summer memory, a late-night movie with friends, a scene that made them laugh, a moment that helped them get through something. That's what separates Bruce Willis from the rest. He wasn't just entertaining, he was connective tissue in the emotional fabric of his audience's lives. There will be more awards, more accolades, but none of them will truly capture the impact he made simply by being himself. Not every actor gets to leave behind a body of work that spans decades and genres. Even fewer get to do it while staying true to who they are. Bruce managed both. His performances were powerful, not because he pretended to be something else, but because he tapped into something real, something universal. Even in retirement, he continues to inspire, not by doing, but by being. His silence speaks volumes. His smile still moves people. His family's love reminds everyone what matters most when the lights go down and the credits roll. And in that way, Bruce is still performing just off screen, in a quieter, more personal role, where the stakes are higher and the rewards are deeper. So where does that leave the fans? Maybe with a little more appreciation for the time they had, for the movies that changed them, for the actor who never asked for attention, but earned it anyway, for the man who reminded everyone that being a hero isn't about being perfect, it's about showing up, fighting through the chaos, and doing the right thing when no one's watching. Bruce Willis isn't just a part of film history. He's a part of people's emotional history. And that doesn't fade. It echoes in theaters, in living rooms, in memories passed from one generation to the next. That's the kind of immortality most actors dream of. Bruce didn't chase it. He just lived his life, told his stories, and walked away with grace. And now, as fans, the best tribute is to keep those stories alive. Watch the films again, share the lines, remember the moments. Because even if Bruce Willis has stepped away from the spotlight, what he gave will always remain.